Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 224 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 80 of A Storm of Swords, that is Sansa 7.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. It's it's Molly's fourth Wednesday of the year, so actually we did have a pretty big milestone this past Saturday. Her
third Saturday of the year?
Yes, her last competitive swim meet, Molly's. I don't know if I said Molly or not there, but yes, Molly's last competitive swim meet. And that one hit me pretty hard. That it really did. It was it was conference championships, and it was also senior day, so they honored all the seniors. And there's a big poster of her, and they called the seniors out one at a time and gave them flowers, and they walked across the pool deck, and there's a big thing that says "Congratulations, seniors" on the jumbotron there. And she started swimming when she was 5, started swimming year round when she was 7, and the hundreds of, probably more like thousands of hours that she and I spent either at a swim meet or at swim practice, or me sleeping in my van while she was at 6 a.m. swim practice, or up at 4 o'clock in the morning, me carrying her down the stairs to get her to a swim meet that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. It just came and went.
I will say that you have invested a ton of time in her swim career. And that must be hard to come to the end of that, because...
Yes, it was. It is different because she hasn't swam year-round for the past 2 years, but she still swam for the high school every year, so I got a little taste of it. Her times, there was never any, that anticipation of excitement of how is this swim going to go? Is she going to, win? Is she going to best her, get a new best time? Is she going to get some sort of sectional standard or something? That kind of went away when she stopped swimming year round. It just became, just cheering her on. Yeah. But still, it all came to a crashing end. Hey, she her very final event, she swam in a relay with one of her best friends, and they won the relay. So,
Yeah. Well, that's good.
It ended on a high note, I guess.
Yeah. So we had our sustainer call yesterday. It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I gave them a taster of this particular story. But my wife's aunt, Alison, came to visit from Florida. And I hadn't seen her for a while, several years, pre-pandemic for sure. But I thought it was 4 or 5 years. My wife tells me it's been more like 10 to 12 years since I've seen Alison.
That happens. Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies, exactly. And I'll admit that I did not rush home to see Alison. I like Alison just fine, but I have work to do. And I knew Alison was going to be around with my mother-in-law and Carson. And I was like, let them have their time together. I don't need to impinge on this. Right. But I hoped to see her. And... sometimes God pats you on the head and says, "Good boy, Simon," and gives you exactly what you're looking for. As I was arriving home from work, they were leaving. I was like, that's what I was looking for.
Perfect.
I got to see her.
Yes.
Didn't have to hang out with her.
Perfectly timed.
But I got out of my car, and she was on the other side of my car, and I said, "Hey, Alison." She said, "Who's talking?" She didn't even see me. So I walked around the car and saw her, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And she said, "Good grief, you've gone grey."
Not good to see you too. Good grief, you've gone grey.
So that's what I got. That's what's happened to me in the last 12 years, apparently.
You've gone grey.
Apparently.
Well, there's worse things to have gotten, I guess.
Well, the other thing, actually, the compounding evidence for Alicent being correct and not just mean-spirited, I was reading in bed the other day, as one does.
As one does.
As the civilized do.
Yes.
And I was struggling to read the book. I think it was my phone, but it may have been a book. It was one or the other. My bedside lamp is not terribly bright, and so it's not the easiest to read anyway. So it must have been a book. Yeah, it was a book, because I couldn't really read it. And I tried putting my glasses on. My glasses are varifocal, so I'm supposed to wear them for everything.
Right.
But I've never worn them for reading, because my reading is perfectly fine without them.
Was, anyway.
It was much better
yes,
with the glasses.
I had a hunch that's where you were going with that.
So there we are.
I tell you what. Well,
and as you can see, but luckily the listeners cannot, I have a Band-Aid on my face because my dermatologist hacked a piece of me out today as well. So if you're listening, kids, wear sunscreen always.
Yes, I sure wish I had started doing that about 30 years earlier than I did. Yeah, it is right there. It's like a quarter of an inch below your left side of your lip.
Yeah, it was just like a pimple. It wasn't a big deal, but she was like, let's just take a little sample of that just to be sure.
Uh-huh.
I compared her to a serial killer who likes to take sort of mementos of patients. You know?
I'm just going to take a bit from this one and a bit from that one.
But I like her a lot. She's very nice, my dermatologist, so I don't begrudge her mementos.
Yeah, I can't remember if I mentioned it on this... on our podcast here, or if I've ever...
It felt like you had other podcasts on the back burner there, Mackelly.
I was going to say on a podcast or at lunch, but I think I've mentioned it before that the first time I went to my dermatologist for a spot on the top of my head, kind of like at the, the top back of my head. Yeah. The dermatologist looked at it and went, "I'll be right back." And went and got her boss, like the head the dermatology doctor of the practice. I was like, oh boy.
I like head dermatologists, like either the chief dermatologist or the dermatologist of the head.
Right? Yes, the chief head dermatologist, maybe she was. And I was like, everything all right back there? And they're like, what could this be? Get the camera. Anyway, we do have a really long chapter, a lot to discuss.
In that case, let's get down to business.
Yes, let's
How did we leave Sansa Stark? Last we saw of Sansa, she and Littlefinger had arrived at his ancestral home, a desolate small keep in the Fingers. Littlefinger gave Sansa a cover story as his newly discovered natural-born daughter named Elaine. They were met by Lysa Arryn, and Lysa and Littlefinger were very promptly, married. After the wedding feast, Marillion made unwanted sexual advances on Sansa, but Lothar Brune ran him off. The next morning, Littlefinger introduced Sansa to her aunt, revealing Sansa's true identity. Lysa seemed kind enough to Sansa and hoped to marry her to young Robert Arryn. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right, and of course, this summary comes courtesy of Jenny of Oldstones.
Thank you, Jenny.
And as Jenny does, she titled this one, Only Cat, which will make sense when we get to the end.
Okay.
Sansa awakens in her bedchamber in the Eyrie, momentarily forgetting where she is. She had dreamt of when she was little, of sharing her room with Arya in Winterfell. Her existence at the Eyrie is lonely, with only her aged maid and little Lord Robert for company.
Lysa too is lonely. Her household is small, and Littlefinger is at the foot of the mountain most days. Lysa has taken to doting on the singer Marillion. She's banished 2 serving girls and a maid for telling tales about him. I have a feeling that those tales were true.
No. Get out.
Just a feeling.
Okay, well, we won't jump to conclusions. Most of the Mountain Lords resent Littlefinger's marriage and his position as Lord Protector of the Vale. Jon Royce is close to open revolt over Lysa's failure to join Robb's cause. He has the support of many houses as well. The mountain clans are making matters worse by being particularly troublesome, and Lord Hunter has died so suddenly that his 2 younger sons are accusing his oldest son of murder.
Sansa realizes she's not going back to sleep and goes to the window. It's snowing outside, and this is the first time she's seen snow since she left Winterfell. She remembers her happiness that day and how she felt that she was beginning a new life, but looking back, she feels as if her life were ending.
Sansa dresses and goes to what passes as the Godswood for the Eyrie to enjoy the snow. She starts to make snowballs, but has no one to throw them at, so she starts using them to build a castle instead. After a while, Sansa realizes she is building Winterfell. She notices people watching her intermittently, but no one stays for long. She has trouble with the bridges until Littlefinger appears with advice, and they finish the castle together.
Sansa flings snow in his face as they finish. Littlefinger quips that the act was unchivalrous, but Sansa replies that so was making her believe that she was going home. Littlefinger admits that he played her false, and then he kisses her. She yields for half a heartbeat, but pulls away in outrage. As she's protesting, Robert Arryn enters and begins to knock down her castle, pretending his rag doll is a giant. Sansa reaches for his arm, but grabs the doll instead, ripping the head off. Robert cries and shakes, flailing violently. Maester Coleman arrives and sedates Robert with dream wine. Sansa spikes the doll's head on a stick and mounts it on her castle wall before stalking away.
Back in her bedchamber, she wonders if she'll be banished and thinks she would actually welcome it. Life would be more exciting at the gates of the moon. She contemplates telling Lysa she won't marry Robert. Then Marillion knocks at the door and summons her before Lysa. She wonders why he's acting as a guard. Marillion closes the door of the high hall and locks the guards out. She thinks she is going to be punished for causing Robert's shaking fit, but Lysa is in a rage over Littlefinger's kiss, thinking Sansa is responsible.
Lysa rants about Catelyn's treatment of Littlefinger when they were young, often leading him on and teasing him. She mentions a specific time when Cat danced with him 6 times, then rebuffed his advances. He drank and passed out afterwards, so Lysa comforted him. After having sex with Lysa, he called her Cat before falling asleep.
Lysa thinks Sansa is trying to steal Littlefinger away like Cat did. She thinks of how Littlefinger was sent away, not because of his duel with Brandon, but because he had gotten Lysa with child. Lysa was tricked into drinking tansy tea and having an abortion, and then married off to Jon Arryn.
Sansa apologises for kissing Littlefinger, which only enrages Lysa more. She insists Sansa accompany her and goes to the moon door, making her niece look down at the vast emptiness below. She pushes Sansa to the edge. Marillion sings while Sansa is shrieking in the midst of Lysa's sobs and rages. They grapple with each other and the guards begin to pound on the hall doors. Littlefinger appears from the back entrance. He tries to stop Lysa, but she is delirious with rage and grief.
She screams that she's the only woman who has ever been true to him. She got him his first post. She killed Jon Arryn at Littlefinger's request with tears of lice. She even sent the letter to Catelyn regarding Jon's death, which was Littlefinger's idea too.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Petyr finally talks her away from the edge and gets her to release Sansa. He admits he's only ever loved one woman. Cat. He shoves Lysa out of the moon door. Marillion looks shocked and horrified. Littlefinger tells Sansa to let the guards in. Marillion has just killed his lady wife.
Only Cat. Wow.
So, stunning end. So this is the last named chapter of the book, right? So this is...
Yeah.
When I saw that Sansa was going to be the last named chapter of the book, I was like, what? It's kind of anticlimactic. How wrong I was. Because that is a climax to a book.
Yes.
So much going on in this chapter.
Lately, I mean, just in these past few, Sansa chapters have really been spilling all the tea lately.
That's what you did there.
The tansy tea, if you will. Littlefinger confirming to Sansa and to us that it was Olenna Tyrell that poisoned Joff last Sansa chapter. And then literally confirming that the tansy that Hoster Tully kept saying while he was dying was actually in reference to the tansy tea that ended Lysa's pregnancy with Littlefinger's child. And now we learn that Lysa killed Jon Arryn on Littlefinger's instruction and then intentionally lied to her sister Cat about the Lannisters being the ones that killed him. So all this in the past 2 Sansa chapters.
Yep. I did her a disservice. She's delivered the goods, says Sansa.
Yes.
So, taking it chronologically, we first get sort of a political update about life in the Vale. The Lords aren't happy. They were never happy with Lysa's decision not to get involved with the war. And that's compounded now by Littlefinger's new role as Lord Protector of the Vale. House Royce is near revolt, and because they're such an influential house, many of the other lesser houses are following them.
Yeah, and that's something that Lysa alluded to last Sansa chapter. She told Littlefinger that Jon Royce is stirring up all sorts of trouble, demanding I call my banners and go to war. And as I thought about it this chapter, especially because it comes up again that Jon Royce is near in revolt over Lysa not backing Robb in the war, and I thought that's a bit surprising. What connection does Jon Royce have to the Starks? And
is this a question, or are you?
No,
you know the answer?
It is a question. I mean, Ned fostered at the Eyrie. So,
that's what I was going to say.
Right.
So Ned fostered at the Eyrie. So presumably they knew each other.
Yeah, it could be also that
they're roughly contemporaries, right? Maybe Jon Royce is a little bit older.
Yeah. His children are older anyway, so you'd think he's a bit older. But maybe Jon Royce believed Stannis' letter about the incest, more than the average lord, and or just thinks that Lysa should support her family. And that got me thinking, maybe it's not the Stark cause that he is so passionately wanting to back. Maybe it's the Tully portion of the war that he is wanting to back, because Brendan Blackfish Tully was the Knight of the Gate for many years in the Vale, and he's a well-respected knight, so possibly the Vale Lords developed a connection with him during their years in the Vale together.
I'm going to say you've got a point there that definitely influences it. The other thing might be that he might, quite understandably, blame the Lannisters for the death of Jon Arryn. Yeah.
Everyone else seemed to think that it
exactly.
was.
Everyone seems to think it was them, and so he lost his liege lord to the Lannisters. Why would he take their side in the war? And also, just one other thing, I think sort of martial lords like Jon Royce want war. They need it, and the Vale is sort of like the one area of the Seven Kingdoms where you can really avoid war if you want to. You just stay home and don't do anything.
Right.
And he probably has this sort of like desire to get involved in war almost on any side, just to be doing something.
Yeah, I had never thought about it that way, but yeah, that makes some sense. It's very opposite of the Riverlands, where the Riverlands gets drawn into almost any conflict because they're stuck in the middle.
No matter how peaceful you feel, you ain't going to be able to stay peaceful. Yeah.
Yes. But one other little bit of news that we get is that Lord Hunter died suddenly, so suddenly that his sons are fighting over whether it was the oldest son's doing that he possibly was murdered. And I just thought real quick I'd remind everyone who Lord Hunter is, in case you're thinking, that name sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't remember.
I'm not even thinking that, Mackelly, but I'll take your...
Well, so elderly Lord Eon Hunter, E-O-N, I'm thinking it's Eon Hunter.
Yeah.
He was in attendance for Tyrion's request for a trial by combat, and he was also in attendance for the actual trial itself. He, in the High Hall, when Tyrion demanded a trial by combat, he
offered to fight.
Yes, he offered to be. He was one of the many that stepped up to be Lysa's champion, assuming it would be Tyrion that they would be fighting.
Right.
He was described as being older than Jon Arryn and seriously crippled by gout. So, it's no major shock that he suddenly died.
Yes. This Lord Hunter died suddenly. At his age, you're going to die.
Right. So, I don't know. Maybe there's more to it, but it certainly seems like he was old and not healthy. So him dying suddenly is not a huge shock.
So for me, the early part of the chapter is all about Sansa coming to the realization that all her life she'd been dreaming and searching and hoping for something, to be swept off her feet by some prince of legend. But that she'd had what she wanted all along. That Winterfell was home, that when she was there, she was surrounded by love. And she's lost that ever since she left. And it's kind of heartbreaking for her to have that realization.
Yes, yeah. She, as she puts, and Jenny references in the summary, she puts it in the chapter that she thought her song was just beginning the day she left Winterfell. But really looking back, it feels like her song was actually ending when she was leaving Winterfell. She's
probably thinking that right now, but in actual fact, right this moment, the world's her oyster. More than most of our characters.
Oh yes, right.
Her story could go in many, many different directions from here. I also wondered if that sort of like that thinking back to her time in Winterfell might constitute some foreshadowing of her resolving to get back there and reclaim it. Now, I don't know if she's actually going to do this, but she is Ned and Kat's second child, and therefore has a claim by primogeniture, our favourite word, to Winterfell. But since the realm and she also believe that Bran and the other one are both dead, she actually is literally in line to the throne, to Winterfell. So I wonder if her becoming wistful and wishing to be back at Winterfell is actually sort of like going to lead her to, well, you know what? I'm actually going to go back to Winterfell and rebuild it.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yeah, maybe that's part of what caused her to say to Littlefinger that it was unchivalrously done, that you said you were taking me home, and in fact you took me to the Eyrie, which is not at all home.
Right, which of course she wanted to go home, but he made the valid point that, what was home for her? It was destroyed and that nobody she loved was there.
Right.
So.
Yes. Yeah. I guess it's good that Jon didn't take the offer to become Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell. If Sansa's thinking the same thing,
we don't know that that's not going to happen. Still, I mean, he could eschew the Lord Commandership in favor of the warm walls of Winterfell with Val in his bed.
Well, that's true. He has not officially declined it yet. Maybe Stannis will up the ante.
He's going to stand on the wall and throw a stick over it for Ghost. Why don't you clear up? So she heads to the Godswood, or what passes for a Godswood in the Eyrie, and she notices a statue of a weeping woman, broken, fallen on the floor, half buried. You know who that is. How do you know who that is?
Yeah, it's a statue of Lysa Arryn, and the reason we know what it is because the fact that it's broken on the ground is because Bronn pushed it over on Ser Vardis Egan during the trial by combat for Tyrion. That's what ultimately killed Ser Vardis, was the statue being pushed over on him. So that's why there's a broken statue in the garden here, or Godswood, whichever
I had
we want to call it.
Completely forgotten that.
That's why I thought I'd mention it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a TV influence thing, because I've pictured the battle going on in the throne room.
Oh yes. Yeah. I could see that being a problem.
Can I just say a quick bravo to Sansa for her castle? The most complex thing I've ever built in snow is like a feeble snowman. Like nothing like as good as you see in real life. So it sounds like really good snow, like perfect sort of like, clumping snow. That's going to come back in pedantry, let me tell you.
Okay.
But I'll just say, I was working in daylight when I made that feeble thing. And I had the help of modern fabrics to keep me warm. So, seriously, kudos to Sansa for building this castle.
Yeah, I guess that's you grow up in Winterfell, and making snow castles is
but
what you do.
She's a child of summer. I mean,
yes.
It snowed occasionally, but
that's true. Yeah. And one thing we get here is the second half of a Ghosts of High Heart prophecy.
Oh, go on.
Well, so this, I'll give you the whole prophecy. This was from Arya 8. I dreamt of a maid at a feast with purple serpents in her hair, venom dripping from their fangs. Now, we discussed that as...
We thought that was her hairnet.
Yes.
That had poison in the purple jewels.
Exactly. Now, here's the second half. And later, I dreamt that maid again, slaying a savage giant in a castle built of snow.
Huh.
So, we've got Sansa building a snow model Winterfell, and then Robert comes along, pretending to be a giant, and smashes it, and then Sansa accidentally rips the head off of the stuffed doll that Robert was using to play the giant. Does that feel like an oddly minute detail about Sansa to put in a prophecy?
Yes, it does. So therefore, you might also think it may be a foreshadowing of something bigger along the same lines.
Yes, maybe. Sure.
But yes, I mean, it certainly fits.
It does. And, we had discussed the last Sansa chapter, the idea that Littlefinger being the stone giant looming over everyone in Bran's dream from way back in A Game of Thrones. She's also currently in a castle covered in snow, being the Eyrie, with a man whose former house sigil is a giant. Now, she doesn't slay him. It's Lysa that goes out the moon door.
That is a question for the end, though, because Baelish has gambled a lot. He's shoved Lysa out the moon door. And, my God, Sansa's going to be grateful for that, because it was, almost literally one or the other. But Petyr Baelish is then going to pin it on Marillion. And that's fine. Nobody really cares about Marillion. In fact, some of us actively want him to die. But if Sansa sees Petyr Baelish as a rival / tormentor, she has a golden opportunity to rid herself of him. Because when those guards come in, Petyr Baelish is going to say, it was Marillion. And Marillion is going to say, it was Petyr Baelish. And the guards are going to turn to Sansa Stark.
Right. One more person was in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Sansa, take your pick.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that could be. It would certainly be a much more impactful part of a prophecy, than just the scene in the garden here.
But winter is coming, and she has many more giants to slay.
Yes, that's true. There could be
so
many more giants in her future.
Exactly, yeah.
And one thing I'll add real quick is that Littlefinger asks Sansa if he can come into her castle. And if that sounded slightly familiar, it's because it's the name of a popular game played among highborn children. I think Rickon was playing it with the Walders.
With the Walders, yes.
Yes, so that's... When he said it, I was like, where do I know that saying from? Oh, yes, I know how I know that saying.
It almost literally sounds euphemistic for sex as well.
It does, yes. It does as well. I agree.
And on that subject, so Petyr Baelish has finally revealed his true colours towards Sansa, right? I mean, there's not been another example of this.
No, you're right.
Check me here, Mackelly.
Yes.
This is the first time that he's actually actively kissed her, or...
Yes.
Okay. We've always suspected, and it's interesting that in the previous chapter, Lothar Brune saved her from Marillion, making similar advances, although in Marillion's case, even less pleasant.
Yes.
But now she knows there's no hope of a repeat for that, because Lothar Brune is Petyr Baelish's man, and so she's really on her own here.
Yeah.
But all that made me wonder, is it conceivable that Petyr Baelish intentionally kissed her where they would be seen in order to set up the reaction from Lysa.
I wondered the same thing because it was very dangerous. First of all, she's a child. He shouldn't be kissing her, period.
Well, yes, okay.
But putting that aside, it is very dangerous to kiss her in such a public place when she is supposed to be his daughter. And Sansa notices plenty of people coming and going and watching her work. And so he doesn't seem like the kind of guy to lose control and do something based on emotion, spur the moment like that. So yes, I had the same wonder that you did. Was it intentional to set up, to elicit a reaction from Lysa? Did he think she was going to go try and shove Sansa out the moon door, and that would give him an opportunity to, instead push her out? I don't know if he had it that far planned out, but
if he did have it that far planned out, he waited a long time before he intervened to save Sansa because she was on the edge. Yeah,
she lost a shoe out the moon door.
Yes. So the whole scene between Lysa Arryn and Sansa is pretty terrifying. There's an unstable person with unrestrained authority getting angry with you and viewing an incident through their seriously distorted lenses. You're in big trouble. Rational argument isn't really going to help you in that case.
Right.
And Lysa seeing Sansa as a sort of like another Catelyn is kind of interesting because that's also what Petyr Baelish sees Sansa as.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I see the similarity there. The symmetry in how they both view Sansa.
Yeah, I gotta say, what would you pick here? Would you pick being accused of Lysa Arryn of stealing her man, or would you rather be accused of treason by Kim Jong-un?
Right. Both are probably not going to end very well.
No. And to our North Korean listeners, we're big fans.
all of those listeners we have in North Korea. But, it seemed to me like possibly Lysa didn't actually see the kiss firsthand.
Just let me to interject. Jenny didn't mention it in the summary, but Lysa was one of the people who Kat saw watching her build the castle.
Yes.
So it is definitely possible she witnessed it.
Physically possible, yes. She did have access to look out into the garden. But when Sansa looked up...
immediately after the kiss.
Yes, she was not there. Now, she might have seen the kiss, was aghast and ran away, but it's also possible that she was told by someone else who did see it and maybe made up the story in her mind that it went the way she claims that it does, that Sansa was the aggressor.
If she'd witnessed it firsthand, she would have still said the same thing.
Yes, I think you're right about that. Yes, I agree. So I wondered, Marillion comes to get Sansa and leads her into the High Hall and then tells the guards to stay out, closes the doors of the High Hall and locks it with a really large spear. And I just wondered, what did Marillion know going in? Did he know that what Lysa was going to do? And he didn't want the guards busting in and when Sansa started screaming and make Lysa look like a horrible person trying to randomly shove this girl out the moon door? Why would he lock the doors like that? Unless Lysa said, when you come back, I don't want anybody else in here. Lock those doors.
Right. I'll believe me, I'm happy to throw any dirt Marillion's way, but I'll give him that. If Lysa said, go get Sansa, bring her back in here and lock the door when you come in, then that's what he would do. He would absolutely do that.
And one more thing I wanted to say about Marillion in this scene is I wonder if he was so confused as to what was happening because he was in the High Hall with Lysa and Sansa while they were having this conversation. Now, the description says he was at the back of the hall, and I'm not quite sure how big the hall was, but I'll say when Roy Dotrice was doing the audiobook version of this conversation, Lysa was doing a lot of shouting at Sansa.
Yeah, and my imagination of any hall is that shouting would carry through a hall.
Yes, and Lysa does call Sansa Elaine some of the time, but also calls her Elaine, but then also says that her mother is Cat. Now, And the cat that is Lysa's sister. Now, Marillion knows Cat, but thus far has treated Sansa like a base-born girl, so you'd think he does not know the truth. And at one point, she outright calls Sansa, she says, Elaine or Sansa or whatever you call yourself. So he must have wondered why Elaine was kissing her father in a way that makes Lysa so upset in the first place. So he must have been like, what is happening? Now, at the end of the chapter, Littlefinger calls Sansa Cat's daughter, like directly in front of Marillion. But he also refers to her as Elaine. So all kinds of mixed messaging going on from Marillion. It's like, wait, so who are you? Who is this girl?
All the more reason to kill him, if you ask me.
Right. He could have shoved them both out the moon door and been like, Marillion shoved Lysa, and then I
shoved him. Yeah, exactly. I am a little bit surprised that Sansa argues so vociferously with Lysa about Cat's pre-Ned virtue.
Agreed.
She's in big trouble. Don't pick fights you don't need to fight. I mean, she wasn't there. Lysa is right about that part of it. Now, Lysa might be lying through her teeth, but pick your battles, you know?
Yeah.
You're trying to save your skin here. Even if the moon door isn't open yet, it's in the corner of the room waiting.
Yeah, she needed to just go along with whatever Lysa said had happened before she was born.
That sounds like Mum.
I'm so sorry you had to deal with that.
When we were writing the script for this one, I noticed that in the last Sansa chapter, we said the words, Lysa doesn't appear to actively mean her niece harm.
That didn't age very well.
Nailed it.
We just didn't want to spoil is all.
Yeah. I will comment also on Marillion that his ability to gently sing along as a child is being pointlessly and mercilessly thrown out of a door to a 600-foot drop is quite stunning, really. I mean,
yeah, he's a true professional, that one. Nothing rattles him. He's going to do his job no matter the circumstance.
So, I'd also like to thank Petyr Baelish for an entirely new experience of being glad to see him.
yeah, for once.
but you know what? I thought about it, and I wonder if I made the same joke in the when he helped Sansa aboard the ship after Joffrey's demise. I might literally have said the same thing then as well. But coincidentally, that was then punctuated by him killing someone who was close to Sansa. So, you know,
yes.
That's how this always ends, you know. Hey, I'm pleased to see Petyr Baelish. Who's for the job?
Everybody ducks and covers at that point.
So your Tansy Tea speculation is finally and completely confirmed, right?
Yeah, we get several long-awaited questions answered here, and that's definitely one of them.
So what I'd like to ask you, just on a sort of like a podcast thing, is why did you not see that as spoiler? Because it felt like you were talking about things that were very hard to infer from what Hoster Tully was saying.
I was basing it off of Kat's assumptions that she was making, and just kind of explaining what Kat is talking about, what some of the thoughts she was having, what they meant. I tried not to go too far into the the very specifics, but I was just giving enough that like this is what she's talking about. This is possible alternatives of what she is suggesting is happening here.
I'm not in any way criticizing. I was just curious. It felt like we sailed a lot closer to the spoiler wind than we normally do with that.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, I think I labored long and hard over whether I considered that too much of a spoiler or not. Yeah.
But so the full story becomes that Petyr Baelish did impregnate Lysa while drunkenly referring to her as Cat.
Eesh.
Ouch.
Yeah, that stings.
And then Hoster did make her have an abortion. It's brutal all round. And whilst it doesn't help, we do know that decision haunted Hoster to the end of his days, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. It was all he could think about in his final days. And so, just a quick refresher, what kind of what I was speculating on, maybe a little too much so at the time, was that yes, Lysa got pregnant. We didn't say who because Kat had no idea who. We threw some ideas out there, one of which was Petyr Baelish. But that Kat speculated that her father, Hoster, sold Jon Arryn on the idea of marrying the deflowered Lysa by pointing out that she is clearly fertile, which was a concern because Jon had no heirs to that point. So that was kind of some of the thoughts she was having. And this also, it explains why Kat and Littlefinger have such different stories regarding him taking her maidenhead. Because...
Oh, he literally thinks he did.
Yes, he bragged about it, about taking both of the Tully girls' maidenhead to all of the Red Keep, and she insisted to Tyrion that they were never together.
Huh.
Now we see why they have such different versions of the story.
Oh, interesting. I'd not put that together, but that is absolutely right.
Yeah, so just to spell it out, at the feast, he got drunk. He thought he was having a sexual encounter with Kat. It turned out it was Lysa. Later, after his duel with Brandon, when he was once again laid up in bed, he thought he was taking Lysa's maidenhead. But the previous time when he thought was Kat was actually Lysa.
Right.
So
right.
he thought he was taking both, but it was Lysa twice.
You answered my unasked question, because I was going to say, why did he think he had both of them? Because that was why. Thank you.
There you go. So it's all coming a little clearer now.
Right, but never mind that. We finally have our Jon Arryn murderer.
We do. Ned would be so happy to know that this is finally solved.
Let me just say, only a chapter ago I was accusing new people of this. Janice Slint, if you remember.
Right. You had some solid evidence. Ned would have fallen for it.
But it was Lysa Arryn, working on Petyr Baelish's instruction. And let's just be clear about this. He didn't just provide her with the Tears of Lys because she asked him for a way to remove Jon Arryn. He told her to do it for us. Air quotes around us.
Right.
So he was more than just a facilitator. He at very least encouraged her in this idea, if not actually being the person to come up with the idea.
Right. Yes. That's a important distinction, because there were reasons for her to want to kill her husband.
Indeed.
On her own, but this for us implies that she was being sold a bill of goods that then Petyr and Lysa can be together. And do you notice Tears of... It's Lys. Some people say Lys, some people say Lys. Tears of Lys, Tears of Lysa. There's Lys, Lysa. There's some kind of similarly named there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So I thought real quick, because it's been so long ago and there were so many twists and turns, that I'd give a real quick refresher of the details of Jon Arryn's death and how it came about.
By the way, we're 3 books in now, and Jon Arryn just died before these 3 books started. This has been a long-running saga.
That's why I was rushing to try and finish that before we started recording today. I was like, okay, I have to read all this to make sure I got my facts straight. I think I got everything straight in my head here. So, we start out with Stannis informing Jon Arryn of Cersei and Jaime's incest. Jon Arryn decides to foster little Robert, his son Robert, with Stannis on Dragonstone. Lysa, being obsessed with her son, has absolutely no interest in that happening. That's when Littlefinger uses her obsession for her son and her love for Littlefinger to get her to poison her husband. Pycelle recognized the Tears of Lys being what was happening to Jon Arryn, but he figured the Lannisters did it. So he took over control of taking care of Jon Arryn and proceeded to let him die. Now you recall Hugh of the Vale, who was killed by the Mountain in the Hands Tourney. Well, Littlefinger had suggested to Ned that someone should talk to Hugh of the Vale. Jory tried. He wasn't very cooperative, so Ned thought he would try himself, but coincidentally, he died before Ned could talk to him. Varys suggests to Ned that Hugh was a possible candidate for Jon Arryn's murder.
Administrator of the poison.
Yes. And let's not forget the other half of this. Lysa lying to her sister in a letter out of the blue that it was the Lannisters that killed Jon Arryn. Now, why would Littlefinger want to do that? Why not just let enough be enough? Jon Arryn mysteriously died. End of story. Why do that? That's a little less clear cut, but I think most people believe that Littlefinger is an agent of chaos.
Right.
And so he knew that Robert was going to go call on Ned to be his new hand of the king. So this immediately creates a issue between the Starks and the Lannisters, because the new hand of the king is going to suspect the Lannisters of killing his father figure and former hand of the king, sowing trouble between the two.
Yeah. And also, it embroils him with Cat.
Yes.
To a certain extent. But then I thought about that, and then I immediately sort of discounted it, because why didn't he go to Winterfell? Wouldn't you, if you wanted to see Cat, wouldn't you have argued for you being in that? I mean, a gazillion people went to Winterfell in that first thing. Why not one more?
I'm sure he could have said, I grew up with Cat. I'd love to see
exactly.
Catelyn Stark, Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. But one thing I'll say is, he can't truly have wanted to be with Lysa Arryn.
I agree. Yes, I think that's absolutely true. He wanted to be with Lysa Arryn because of where the levels that it elevated him to, and I don't just mean geographically.
So I'll ask you, how calculated, on the calculated to rash-ometer, how calculated or rash was his decision to murder Lysa here?
Yeah, right? So there's two options, right? He had planned to push her when he saw the opportunity, when he saw, oh, yeah, she's standing right by the gates of the moon here. By the moon door, I can just give her a shove and out she goes. Or he decided when she opened her mouth about killing Jon Arryn and framing the Lannisters all on his instruction and thought, I can't trust this lady. I need to shove her out this door.
He decided while he was building snow castles with Sansa that he would kiss Sansa in full view of his wife, precipitating a situation in which he would be able to kill her.
Yeah,
that's the truly calculated version of it.
That is the master manipulator game right there, which he's pretty good at it. So you can't rule that out.
The one thing is, all right, so looking at the rash side of it, he can pin the actual murder on Marillion, but then keeping the Lords of the Vale on side is going to be super difficult.
Yes, it is.
They're
already not happy that he is, Lysa's husband and Lord Protector of the Vale.
Exactly. Now, I will say that part of it might be kind of altruistic. He might really want to protect Sansa. He loves Sansa in some ways, and she was in real danger from Lysa. And so some of it might be that. I'll give him...
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. But yeah, maybe he thought she's going to end up killing her.
You don't really give Petyr Baelish a fair crack, Mackelly. That's the problem.
Right. Yes. I rarely do.
But the flip side of that, of course, is that he often chooses the riskier, more chaotic path.
Right.
Jon Arryn's murder, the letter to Cat, these are crazy turbulent things that don't need to happen.
Yeah.
That he's precipitating. Pushing Lysa out the moon door? Totally within those realms of that, yeah.
Lying about the dagger having been Tyrion's when it was...
yeah, exactly.
Not his
One piece of evidence I'll have on the calculated side is that he elevated Lothar Brune to Captain of the Guards of the Eyrie, which is very convenient about now, because the Captain of the Guard would be presumably the one to investigate the murder, and he's going to conclude, yes, it was Marillion.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I will say that putting your own man as captain of the guards is the kind of typical thing that your Varys's, your Tyrions, your Petyr Baelishes would do just for a rainy day.
Right.
But
yes.
It just happens to be very handy right this second.
It does, I agree.
I'll conclude by saying Baelish is a bounder and a cad, and he deserves to be strung up for what he's just done. But if Marillion takes the fall, I'll be okay with that, because he's the worst.
Yes.
It's terribly unfair on Marillion, but it will be satisfying.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that he should have been in deep trouble for.
Exactly.
And, we only got a little taste of it with Sansa last chapter. Chances are that wasn't an isolated incident, so,
Yeah, Sansa said that he used his favoritism to act completely differently outside of Lysa's vision than within it. And basically, he was conceited and arrogant when she wasn't around.
Yeah, so he's probably being brought up on the wrong charges, but he should be brought up on charges regardless. So
yeah. All right, do you have some background for us?
I do. I wanted to tell you all about another Arryn regent who ruled the Vale in her son's name from the Eyrie. Shara Arryn was known as the Flower of the Mountain, and she was considered one of the most beautiful women in all of Westeros. And she was well aware of her beauty. In fact, when Aegon the Conqueror began his invasion of Westeros, Shara sent a portrait of herself to Aegon with an offer. That offer was that she'd agree to marry him if he'd agree to make her son Ronald his heir. Aegon, who already had 2 sister wives, passed on the offer, so it came to war. The Vale fleet earned a victory over the Targaryen fleet off the coast of Galtime, but the victory was short-lived because, you see, the Targaryens have dragons. And big ones.
Yeah.
So Visenya Targaryen simply balanced the scale by burning the Vale fleet courtesy of her dragon Vhagar. When other kingdoms of Westeros began to fall to Aegon, Shara amassed a large part of the Vale force at the Bloody Gate, trusting that the gate would prove as impenetrable as it always had.
Can I just mention, well as being able to burn ships, dragons can also fly.
Yes, again, dragons. Instead of smashing a ground force against the Bloody Gate, Visenya once again simply, as you mentioned, flew over the gate, all the way to the Eyrie, right into this very courtyard where Elaine/Sansa built her snow castle. And when Shara returned to the castle, she found her son Ronald sitting on Visenya's lap. The boy innocently asked his mother if he could ride on Vhagar with Visenya, and unsurprisingly, Shara bent the knee then and there. And Visenya, being a good sport that she is, then flew little Ronald 3 laps around the Giant's Lance, which is the mountain that the Eyrie sits on. And when they landed, the boy went from King of Mountain and Vale to Lord of the Eyrie and Warden of the East.
Lysa would also have bent the knee in that situation.
Yeah,
Shara
maybe?
and Lysa have something in common, I think. In comparison with the television show, Sansa is first joined by Robert in the Snow Castle scene. Their scene is, for a while, quite friendly and affectionate. He talks of killing anyone she wants once she's Lady of the Vale. And Sansa wistfully thinks that doesn't sound too bad.
She's got
Robert
a list.
Yeah, exactly. Robert Arryn then accidentally damages the castle, and that annoys Sansa. And then they argue, and he stomps on the castle. And then she whoops him upside the face for stomping on the castle.
Okay.
He runs away with the look of a child not used to censure. And then Petyr Baelish joins Sansa. Sansa's worried about what she's done. He reassures her that it was overdue.
Okay.
Petyr Baelish and Sansa then talk. He says that he killed Joffrey because Joffrey hurt Catelyn. And he loved Catelyn. He then kisses her. She lets it happen for a second before pushing him off. Sophie Turner is taller than Aidan Gillen. So the sense of the man molesting a child is somewhat obscured by that fact.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
We do see a figure in the background moving away. The moon door is open the whole time, and Marillion is dropped, sadly, not through the moon door, just from the scene. There's no mention of John Arryn or Tansy T. Petyr Baelish pushes and scene.
Okay. Good stuff.
Pedantry corner. A couple of points, all right. Okay. While she's building the castle, it says that the wind makes the snow drift against the walls of her castle. Now, the walls of her castle aren't very tall, so this wouldn't be a very big snowdrift to begin with. But
right. Okay.
In my experience, the type of snow that drifts is the dry, powdery type of snow.
Yes.
Not the large snowflake clumping type that would be ideal for building a snow castle like Winterfell.
Uh-huh. I'm with
you.
you.
And that heavy, wet, clumpy snow tends to fall without wind.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Furthermore, she's in an interior walled garden where the wind will be dampened by the walls. So the whole thing just doesn't quite hang together. It's either windy and drifty or it's wet and, clumpy.
Clumpy. Right.
It just feels like, you know what? It's not our first snow-related pedantry.
I recall that, as you were talking about it, I recall we had previous snow pedantry.
Where does George Martin live? New Mexico?
He does now. He grew up in New Jersey. But,
he did. So he's aware of snow. I just feel like he's a child of summer these days. He just doesn't understand snow the way he ought to.
Right.
And secondly, she built most of Winterfell and then dawn crept into the garden. How dark would it be in an interior courtyard on a snow night, so no moon, no stars, in the mountains? It would be pitch black.
It would be very dark unless there were some sort of torches or something providing illumination.
Right. There would be some torches, but they would be on the peripheries, and she's in the middle of the garden. I can't believe it. It feels like it would be like the bottom of a well where she was building this castle.
When the sun finally came through, the castle was really just a bunch of clumps.
Exactly.
She's like, I'm so proud of prettier in my mind.
Yeah, look, it's Winterfell. What, that big mound?
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Darkness.
It just seemed astonishing. I mean, because it's hours of work. So she's working in the dark that whole time before dawn crept into the cloister,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I have a little one which has a very possible explanation of coincidence, really.
Go on.
She recalls early in this chapter that the older servants telling her of the liveliness in the castle when, and I quote, her father and Robert were wardens of John Arryn.
Right.
It's the her father part. If
Mackelly,
not repeating someone else's words. Yeah.
You're forgetting. Sansa is Ned Stark's daughter. You're just forgetting.
I know. But if she weren't repeating someone else's words, she would say my father. She says her father and Robert Baratheon were words of John Arryn. It's just the wording sounds like servants know her true identity, but supposedly nobody but Lysa and Petyr Baelish know. And like I said, could definitely just have been a coincidence that they mentioned how, sorry that you're here and it's so boring. Once upon a time.
Yeah.
And
she's
exciting.
also talking about my father in the sense of her father. You can think of yourself in the third person like that.
Yes.
I get you.
Little.
I can see why it would trigger something, but I think it's probably permissible.
Like I said, it's very possible explanation is just coincidence they brought up her father. But it's just the weird wording of not my father and Robert, but her father and Robert. Sounds like she was repeating someone else's words. That's all.
Yeah. So news and notes. We had a really fun sustainer call yesterday with our various sustainer levels, and one of the things we did was we Mackelly and I did a personality test, and then we compared ourselves to the characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, and it was very interesting. I mean, not particularly. I think mine was kind of perhaps reinforcing some stereotypes. I was Tyrion Lannister or Petyr Baelish. It kind of tracks, I'll admit it. Yours were more difficult to pin down, though, because yours,
Yes.
I don't know.
Marjorie Tyrell and the High Sparrow.
Yeah.
Which is a character we haven't met yet in the story, but...
Right, yeah, but Marjorie we have. But I think we might reference that a few more times because there were some interesting things. You know, the coincidence of who Sansa is in the same box as is an interesting one. We might bring that up later on because it's
right.
Because the thing is, to bring it up now, I feel like is a spoiler for where Sansa's character might go.
Okay.
Because right this second, Sansa is nothing like the person she's in the same character box as.
Right,
but when we said it last night, one of the sustainers, T and Books, said, "No, they're very similar." They're like as if it was like, "Oh yeah, sure, they should be in the same box." But right this second, it doesn't feel like they should. So
yeah,
we might bring this up later on.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I don't know if you've been on Discord today, but it came up in Discord that we did that in last night's call, and several people had done it themselves to see.
Oh, cool. I'll have a look at that and see what they are. Yeah.
And speaking of our call last night, George C., who was on our call.
We got to meet for the first time. Very nice fella.
He was. I very much enjoyed his company.
Yep.
Last week we mentioned that he joined us at the, I believe, Landed Knight tier, and since then he has upgraded to the Small Council tier. So I feel like that was worthy of a mention because that's
for sure.
Really
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
I'm hoping he's not regretting his decision after last night. So we got a review on podchaser.com from Koyel Rana 2006. Amazing podcast. I came across it accidentally on Spotify while searching for music to listen to as I read the books. Now it's my go-to podcast whenever I'm doing assignments or traveling. It definitely elevated my reading experience as well. Oh, there you go. Actually, I feel like this episode has elevated my own reading experience, Mackelly. Some of the things you said, like, for instance, the fallen statue. I'd forgotten how the statue felt and who it was.
Ah, okay. Well, glad I could provide that reminder for you. And thank you very much for that review, Koyel
Rana, I'm going to say. Yeah.
Koyel Rana, 2006. Thank you very much. That was a very, very nice review. Much
yes, thank you. So let's conclude. So, all change in the Eyrie. The Royces were in almost open rebellion against Lysa's decision to stay out of the war anyway. How are they going to react to the news now that she's dead and therefore Littlefinger is in charge?
Right.
Does he salve their wounds by bringing them into the war? I mean, that's one thing you could do. If you say, now Lysa's out of the picture, we can do what you wanted to do, Jon Royce. We can go to war. But on whose side? The Starks have basically lost, right?
Right. Yeah. It'd be fascinating to find out what they would do in that situation. Now, remember, he's supposed to be there in the Eyrie to bring them onto the side of Tom and Baratheon.
Exactly. So again, it feels like an Agent of Chaos thing. It's kind of like, all right, so now here I am. What the heck am I going to do with this?
Yes. How am I going to get around this one? But, it does, like you said, is Petyr going to climb another rung here? We've watched his progression, going from Master of Coin to randomly winning the title of Lord of Harrenhal, even though it's supposed to be a cursed title, which we now know it was what he needed to have the stature in the realm to marry a Lysa Arryn.
Mm-hmm.
And now with her gone, he's surely planning on ruling in Robert's name, right? He's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to step aside and, let whoever else might be more suited for this. Surely he's going to do that, step in and rule in Robert's name. Will the other Vale Lords allow it? They're already upset that he's Lord Protector of the Vale. And now he's not even married to Lysa Arryn. He's not even married to an Arryn anymore. So,
and he only was for a few weeks. I mean, like, it's not like it was a husband who you didn't like, who was at least a husband for 10 years,
Yes, right. He established himself as, in that role.
All of his shenanigans might be scuppered if Sansa doesn't back him. Sansa has his life in her hands right this second.
Now, could it work out theoretically the guards come in, and Littlefinger says it was Marillion. Marillion says it was Littlefinger. And Sansa says, no, it was Littlefinger. Just watch it. It just happened right now. And the captain of the guards, Lothar Brune, says, I saw that.
It sounds like it was Marillion to me.
Yeah. I know there was a problem between Elaine and Lysa. I think she's lying. I think Marillion and Sansa were in it together or something like that.
Interesting. So that I hadn't really thought of that she has this potential to do whatever she wants here, but there is a lot more danger in pointing to Petyr Baelish than there is to point to Marillion.
Yeah, there's no real danger in pointing to Marillion.
Well, apart from the fact that you've sided with Petyr Baelish forevermore.
Well, yeah, that's true.
That is a dangerous thing to do, I feel.
Yeah.
And again, just asking the question, does her playing in the snow connote her desire to get back to Winterfell and perhaps reclaim it for the Starks?
Yeah, I spent some time thinking about that because like a good quarter of this chapter was describing her playing in the snow and her feeling of snow in her mouth, making her feel stronger, like she's back in Winterfell, the taste of Winterfell with the snow in her mouth, and so much time and effort describing the construction of this castle. And I thought, why? Some part of me just thought George Martin was enjoying this scene, playing in the snow as Sansa Stark. And I part of me just thought it was just showing that Sansa is still a child at heart. She's caught up in all these high political espionage things. And really, she's just a 13-year-old girl who enjoys building castles and playing in the snow. And like you said, she obviously misses home and longs for simpler times at home with her family. And, I think that was my thought on why we spent so much time watching her build a snow castle and play in the snow.
Yeah. But as we said, it was the last named chapter in the book. We've come an awful long way. And next up, we do have an epilogue, which you say here in the notes. We meet a new character who's also kind of an old character, so I am intrigued.
Yes, you definitely don't skip out on the epilogue just because it says epilogue.
All right,
You're definitely going to want to tune in and hear.
I'm sort of contractually obliged to not to. Oh, you mean the listeners? I see what you're saying.
The listeners, yes, the listeners.
All right, there's 4 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review, as Koyorana 2006 did. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. Join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and your interest, and you'll get to meet us and have fun with us. Or you can just make a donation directly at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, you can always check us out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.